Usa ka tingog, usa ka katawhan. Cebu Catholic Television Network.
Cebuanos Filipinos continue to thrive wherever they are all over the world. Catch a glimpse of their adventures as they explore and experience the world and share experiences with Filipinos living abroad. Join us and travel the world through their eyes with Attorney Divine Marshall Flores live from New Brunswick, Canada, and Tony Ortega live from British Columbia, Canada. This is CCTN International Pinoy Journeys.
Good morning Cebu, good morning Philippines. Welcome sa atong tulumanon CCTN International Pinoy Journeys. Friday na usab karon, busa kami na usab ang makig-uban kaninyo. Ako si Divine Marshall Flores live gikan diri sa New Brunswick, Canada.
Ug ako na usab si Tony Ortega live gikan diri sa siyudad sa Cebu, Philippines. Good morning Cebu and good afternoon Canada.
Wow, suya kay ko nimo Brad Tony ha. Live yung ka sa studio sa CCTN. Di na live from British Columbia, Canada. Kumusta ang atong sugbo?
Tinood, Attorney Divine, it's nice to be back in Cebu. So kahit mayroong kaunting aberya, but we were able to manage everything. But Cebu is still Cebu. It's still jet lag, adjusting kainita gyud. Dili kay ingon, hindi po ibig sabihin na parang naninibago tayo, pero iba talaga ang environment ngayon.
Yeah, sa Cebu init kayo.
Super kainit, Attorney Divine. I think ang resulta sa init tungod ang dami ng sasakyan ngayon, tapos nagko-contribute po yung niya sa medyo mainit. Pero it's good thing din kasi maganda ding maranasan natin yung medyo kailangan din na mainit kasi lamig natin dyan.
Correct. It's totally opposite. So, there's no place like home, especially kung nagdako diya sa Cebu, nindot yung kayo mabalik ko, ang buwad, ang ginamos, ang barbecue, ang lechon. Unsa pa imong gikaon diya, Brad Tony?
Ang first time kong binili, Attorney Divine, yung mangustin.
Fruits, di ba?
Fruits, hindi ako kumain ng ang daming prutas kasi.
Okay, so karong buntana, Brad Tony, lain na usab ang atong guest, ang ato ikauban. Ako excited kaayo ko kay usually ang atong guest is from the Philippines. Ang ilang i-share is their journey abroad. And this one, it's different because ang iyang mga ginikanan mo ay mga Pilipino o iyang isulti ang iyang journey diri sa Canada isip usa ka Pilipino because she was born and raised here in Canada. And I'm just wondering kung giunsa niya pag-maintain sa pagka-Pilipino because during our pre-interview, Brad Tony, ang galing niya magsalita ng Tagalog.
Totoo yan, Attorney Divine. Sabi pa ng isang author ng libro na for us to move forward, we have to look backward. So I think ito yung sitwasyon niya kasi ang galing kasi talaga niya para hindi naman karamihan pero yung niya, yung aura niya kung paano po siya magsasalita ng Tagalog at saka yung niya, yung culturally siya oriented the Filipino culture.
Yes, true. Because there are some kids nga dinala dito sa Canada, naging Canadianized na daw. They cannot even speak their own language. But kining our guest this morning, let me introduce to you, anak siya og mga Filipino, but dinhi siya natawo sa Canada, but maayo kay siya mosulti og Tagalog ug suhito kaayo sa kulturang Pilipino. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest this morning, Sammie Rumbua, live from Vancouver, Canada. Hi Sam.
Hi Sam, good morning.
Hello, kumusta?
Yeah, we're good. Kumusta ang Vancouver? Anong oras natin dyan sa Vancouver?
Mga 6:30 p.m.
Okay, so it's 9:30 in the Philippines, 6:30 your time, and of course, 10:30 my time in the evening. So Thursday night sa'yo, di ba?
Yes.
Okay. So Sam, you're the first guest na interviewin namin na born and raised in Canada. Kasi lahat ng mga na-interview namin is from the Philippines talaga, and then nag-migrate sa Canada. So iba yung experience ang masishare mo sa natin, sa mga kababayan natin na nakikinig ngayon. But first, gusto naming malaman yung roots mo sa Philippines. Taga saan yung parents mo?
Yeah, yung tatay ko, Ilocano siya, and his dad is from Ilocos Norte, Pasukin. Pero raised siya sa Manila, Caloocan. Tapos yung mami ko, Las Piñas. Tapos nag-meet sila sa Winnipeg, Manitoba na.
Okay, so
Attorney Divine, sorry to cut you. Attorney Divine, sorry to cut you. Yung accent talaga ang accent ni Sam is iba talaga.
Halata.
Halata. So, nung nag-migrate yung parents mo sa Manitoba, Canada, when was that? And wala pa silang anak at that time?
Yeah, na-meet na sila sa Winnipeg. So it was 1990 that they moved to from Winnipeg to Vancouver, actually. But before that, my dad worked for a company, Barta Batteries, and there was a huge layoff. So before we decided to move to Vancouver, 6 months kami sa Philippines muna.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So nakapa-experience ka sa Philippines before you moved sa Vancouver.
That's why I was saying I did grade 1. Napakahirap. I think I was grade mga 2 or 3, pero syempre advanced sa Philippines. So me and my sister got to go on a grade 1 class kasi may kaibigan ng mami ko ng teacher. So we got to experience a little bit of how hard it is.
Yeah. So, kumusta namang experience mo doon? Of course, bata ka pa doon, but at that time, do you still remember what was your experience in that time?
I do remember it kasi it was fun. We had to have the uniform. Tapos hindi kami sanay, right? For having a uniform, getting up early. So they knew that we were from abroad, but they included us sa mga tests, mga activities, yung mga performance. So it was really fun. Of course, we're English speaking, so it was that's how we learned. It was a little bit of Baroque Tagalog, pero kaya naman namin. So that's how I was able to instill. And my mom and dad really wanted us to keep in touch with our culture and be in touch with our my grandparents there.
So Sam, yung nandoon ka na sa school, in the school setting, wala ka bang na-discover na ang tingin sa'yo mas mataas kasi galing ka sa ibang bansa, Pilipino ka nga, pero yung orientation is abroad. Pero yung mga bata mo doon, mga kaklase mo doon is nandun sa Pilipinas. Ano ba sa palagay mo? Mayroon bang they look up you?
I think, syempre kasi balik-balik lang kami doon. So, we were accepted, syempre, sa mga kaibigan, but you can tell that we weren't not from there. Kasi syempre, with my parents and my aunts and titas and titos, sinasabi nila, don't speak English kasi halata pag nasa jeepney kami. So, it's always that, foreigner kayo. But, like I said, when we go out, halata, because they would notice that we were a little bit lighter skin and just like namumula ang mukha namin kasi sa init. So, you can tell hindi sanay kami sa init.
Okay. So, Sam, paano, yung yung ma-remember mo, paano kayo pinalaki ng parents mo na hindi mawawala yung Filipino culture natin? Ano yung Filipino culture na hindi nawala sa pamilya nyo kahit dito kayo sa Canada lumaki?
Yeah, we grew up talagang Pinoy yung lifestyle kami. Yung pagkain sa bahay, yung kanin. We would go home sa summertime tsaka sa Christmas. I think Christmas really was the main time that we got to experience the culture, yung mga caroling, yung manopo, the respect, all of the traditions that Filipino household like brings, and of course the Filipino movies, and I think the Filipino movies and the karaoke that we practice at home, whether it was in Canada or in the Philippines, talaga na sana kami marinig ng Tagalog.
Oh, so, wala ka bang reaction, Sam, na ano tong Filipino movie? Iyak ka na naman. Ano naman? Chismisan? Ano ba yun?
I love it. Gusto ko nga. It was good. I mean, you really see the drama, the teleseries and everything. Pero I know sometimes they say like we can speak better Tagalog than some of the actors that are from abroad. But especially the game shows too. Those were the ones that were very entertaining and that we would watch while growing up. So, there's just a lot of the things that I love about the Philippines, and every time I go home and I would come back, I would really want to bring that culture or that history back here in Vancouver. So that's why I felt that I was really the gap between the Filipino community and the culture from coming back to Canada every time.
Some, you mentioned a while ago na pabalik-balik kayo sa Pilipinas. Ano yung mga experience mo sa Pilipinas? Then you realize na, is there a time na nakarealize ka, buti na lang dito ako sa Canada, isinilang, or buti sa Pilipinas ako isinilang?
Yeah, I was fortunate to lead a group of volunteers kasi nag-volunteer ako sa foundation called Inspire Foundation. Nag-house building kami doon. And we got to visit different parts of the Philippines that I wasn't used to. Kasi syempre, when you're balikbayan, you visit family, you go to SM, you go to Laguna. Pero this time, when 2010, when I went, we got to really meet the community. And visit some of the places that were not so fortunate. And so we really, for me, I really realized that there was a big need to help the Philippines and an obligation parang magtulong sa isa't isa, like the Filipinos that are immigrating here, but also for the Filipinos back home in the Philippines.
Like what places ang binisita nyo that time that made you realize na we really need to help them?
It was in the area of Bulacan and Bagong Silang. So those were the areas where people lived in stilt houses and the cemeteries. So, for me, it was my first time being introduced to cemetery people that lived like mismo sa cemetery. So that's a picture from 2010 with Inspire Foundation. So the group of us really, had a culture shock and, felt an obligation to really create awareness, fundraise money for the people there.
So after that experience, parang ginugol mo na yung time mo to yung mag-fundraising para sa mga Filipino community?
I think especially after 2010, you look at your values and you look at what you're doing para sa career mo or even your passion. And what I felt was there were so many people that were moving away from the Philippines in order to make money for their families. And I found that there was a little adjustment that needed to be that a lot of programs, and I guess I can tell a little bit of a story, is that when my mom immigrated to the Philippines, she was actually only 16 years old. And so she moved there right before my dad. And so for her, she went with her mom and dad and she worked right away. She didn't finish school. And so parang nagtrabaho siya right away and she didn't get to join any of these social programs that I promote now. Kasi wala siyang alam, right? And nobody really promoted her. So I found it interesting to be, if more Filipinos knew about these free programs, how to help them adjust, or how to make friends or network or volunteer opportunities. I find that really helps and cultivates our community.
So Sam, paano po yun? How did you, ano po yung responses ng mga kasamahan mo about volunteering when you're initiating the program? ano
Yeah.
ba, very aggressive po ba ang suporta?
It's a very good, yes, syempre, it's very good because we all have similar stories that we're born in Canada, we love our culture, and most of the my second generation, we're only aware of food. Kasi yung pagkain, right, sa bahay, we know the food, we can probably understand Tagalog, but we're not really aware of the history or to speak the language. And so I think when we did with Tulayan as another organization that I was with, we promoted Tagalog lessons for adults. We had a very huge response because so many people wanted to learn Tagalog because their parents never taught them, or they might have lost it kasi pumunta sila when they were really young, like let's say nag-move sila dito mga 3 or 4, tapos nawala ang Tagalog nila. So even that sense, even though they're Filipino born, like Philippine born, nawala yung Tagalog nila and they want to get it back. So, we've created programs, like volunteer programs, like the Tagalog lessons, Pinoy story time, where we read folk tales of Filipino folk tales. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Sam, ano po, how do you react about this? Na mayroon ding mabuti ka, ang experience mo is ganun po, yung paningin mo sa buhay mo. Pero I also have encountered a group of Filipino leaders in here na sabi nila, "Oy, wala na akong pakialam sa Pilipinas. You're here in Canada now. Why are you still thinking about the Philippines?" So, how do you reply that comment?
Well, for my response to that is that we can't forget where we come from.
Yes.
And I know there is a response that, di bali na, we have other things to do, and of course we do have to look after our own family first. My vision and my hope is that our culture, our history, our traditions don't die here in Canada, because that's what makes us an intercultural community and an intergenerational community. And I think when the elders say that, it is sad, because we still need a lot of the history from them, to learn from them. But the feeling that I have right now is that the second generation is very strong in keeping our culture alive. Talaga. Like, there has been a movement in the past couple years that we're getting more representation, our voices are being heard, our talents and education is being recognized. There's just so much more for representations for the Filipino community. So for that, I just want to, not give up hope and just keep on inspiring and be with people who are like-minded, that want to see a change for our community.
Yeah. Okay, Sam, you have actual encounter. You encountered the community, the Filipino community talaga, no, diyan sa Vancouver because of your volunteer work. Ano yung nakikita mong problema sa mga Pinoy na from the Philippines tapos mag-migrate dito sa Canada? Most especially pag nauna yung parents tapos to follow na yung mga anak.
Yes.
Parang nawala yung connection nila for a long time or for how many years. Ano yung nagiging problema sa mga parents na nauna?
Yeah, one of my positions actually was a youth settlement worker. So yung trabaho ko was to really connect with the children of caregivers or yung bagong dating. And so when we talk about the problems or the barriers, it is really adjusting. Because if you think about it, some of the kids or the youth don't want to leave Philippines because may buhay na sila doon, di ba? And then all of a sudden, paperwork doesn't go through for about, 5 or 7 years, tapos hindi na nila kilala yung nanay nila. And so that's the reunification problem, where there is so much adjustment, and when it comes to parenting as well as adjusting a life in Canada. And so there is a lot of barriers that the child will go through, where they should be going to school, halimbawa, they will fall behind kasi in the Philippines it's ahead of Canada. So halimbawa, if they finish college, they'll have to go back to high school. or if they come when they're little, like 18, 19, they miss the high school window and they miss that socializing in a Canadian school system. So they would either go to adult education or magtatrabaho na sila. So there's a big adjustment that where they don't have a network, wala silang kaibigan, and they will want to work right away in order to help pay rent with their family. So right? So as much as we want them to continue school, sometimes they don't have a choice to go to school or finish school because they need to work and pay rent. And the main thing with our community is, we are very known to be, we're not the only community, but we are, one of the number one remittance company. Like, we're the number one communities that send remittance back home to the Philippines.
Pero sa yung observation ko po, yung mga bata ngayon, lalo na dito sa Vancouver, when they're already involved in the community, kung titingnan natin yung community ngayon is very vibrant. Pero nakikita natin ang youth sector ngayon ng Filipino community is very aggressive now in helping and volunteering the community, especially you. I find that we're very interested in just getting to know our roots, because just like the quote that you said, if we don't know where we come from, how do we know where we're going? And so before, I can say there was a big barrier between Filipino-born Filipinos and Canadian-born. There was a big shift, especially in schools, where there was just not as much collaboration or understanding. And I think here too, when you're Canadian Filipino, there is still that sense of you're not Filipino enough or you're not Canadian enough. And I think now with the immigrants who are coming in, we're having more of an understanding of really not feeling like we belong. And of course too, with the pandemic, there has been a lot of I guess more conversation about that, and not even just with the pandemic, but a lot of the social issues that have been coming up, especially with the anti-racism, hate crimes that have been going on in Canada and the United States.
But have you experienced the discrimination, Jan? Kahit kayo you were born and raised in Canada.
Yes, 100%. This is like in public streets, on the bus, in a workplace. Being, a young Filipino woman, there are so many barriers and so many incidents where people would say things to you and do racist things. And it is an unfortunate act where a lot of us don't speak up about them because of fear. And I do feel, I am one of the ones that will say something. However, I do think of the seniors and the other immigrants who have shared their story with me that aren't, ready to come out that way. And that is, again, up to them. But there is a lot of discrimination and racism still here in Canada. And it's not just in the U.S. And I think that's, sometimes people think that we're better off in Canada versus the U.S., but there is just as much discrimination here in Canada, not just for Filipinos, but for the Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
Pero Sam, is that because yung lack of advocacy na here in Canada there is no such thing real Canadian, because Canada is a country of immigrants, and Canada cannot be Canada without Asia. So ano po yung reaction mong ganon?
We do have a diverse community here, of course. We're full of immigrants here. And the one thing about that is that there are still groups of people, whether they're small or big, that don't want us here or don't understand the value or even accepting. There's still lots of ignorance out there. So unfortunately, when that small group is very toxic, their voices are louder. And so hence why things are important to me, like civic literacy is the power to vote and the power to speak your mind and the voice. And so the more that we empower our community, the more that we'll be louder. And so that's why I believe representation is so important.
Pero
Yeah,
Sam,
true.
na-notice mo ba na, kasi experience ko na pag medyo aggressive ka in the community, napagkamalan ka nila na magmayabang. Parang na ano?
You know what? I think that is a Filipino mindset kung ano sila mayabang. Pero if we as a community don't ask for what we deserve and what we need, then they'll ignore us. And I'm talking about, the politicians influencing public policy. And so imagine mo how many Filipinos are in Canada and in BC alone. And so if we only have, one representative in the federal government that's Filipina and one in BC itself, what does that say for our community to see somebody that looks like us represent in those rooms? I think a lot of the question is that, where are the Filipinos on the deciding table, diba?
Yeah, true.
Attorney Divine, meron akong kasi meron akong nalalaman ni Sam na mayroon siyang advocacy ngayon na tinatawag na yun Sam is yung about creating a community center. Ano po yun?
The Bayanihan.
Bayanihan.
Bayanihan building our future. Done by a new buhay house.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a picture of me and my
Nawala ka, Sam.
so
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
oh is it on?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just saying what Tito Tony was mentioning is that we recently launched Bayanihan, our Building Our Future, para to make a community center here in BC kasi wala pa tayong community center or community cultural center that is intergenerational and intercultural. So made by the Filipinos, pero it's for everybody.
So are you planning to makipag-network ka ba with different associations and organizations? Kasi pagkakalam ko, hindi pa yun alam lahat. Are you planning for it?
Yes, of course. That's very important to us. But we want to make it, slow and steady, as in we want to be very transparent. And it's going to take a lot of work. And I've done community engagement in that of organizations before. And so coming out with our launch for Mabuhay House, we're wanting to involve everybody, syempre, and we have a lot of advice that are helping us with this dream that we have. And so even though when a lot of people have not heard about it, they will eventually. It just takes a lot of time because we want to include everybody's comments, concerns, ideas. Kasi syempre, we're wanting to make this a community development. And so even though Mabuhay House is the one that's leading it, we do want everybody to have a say in it.
Okay. Sam, you're an entrepreneur, no? And then, ang dami mong facilitator ka, event planner ka, and then naging community organizer, youth worker. So, paano mo pinasya yung voluntary work mo para sa mga Filipino community?
How do I do it? How do I share it?
Paano yun
managing your time?
A lot of help from my family and my mom, especially, who's in Las Piñas right now. But even as a single mom, I think there's a lot of support that I get from my mom, syempre, and my family. But really faith. I mean, I don't talk about it a lot. However, there is faith in my heart that I have passion for my community and the things that I want to do for the community, and so that drives me talaga. So I, even though if I'm tired from doing these events, I get my energy and passion whenever I think about my purpose that has been given to me and my life. Because I really think, life is short and there's always a purpose for everybody, whether, it's shown to me now, and sometimes there's a vision that I dream and hope for, and I want to leave a legacy, syempre, for my son. When he grows up, there's that legacy that I want to leave for myself, but also for him too.
Okay, Sam, considering na you were born in Canada, so may plano po ba kayo na to run for public office? At least para meron tayong representante?
Good question. I have done it before. I've tried in 2014.
Okay.
And right now, there is no plan to run again. But I always say never, diba?
So anong challenge mo ang na-encounter mo during that time when you ran in 2014?
Literacy for sure for the community, and the thing is with Vancouver, it's a big city, syempre, and there's a lot of money that goes into campaigning and elections, and so I had a great team and support with that, and even with my family coming to support me, it was like their first time really getting involved. And the process that I loved about that is that even though, let's say, you're not Canadian citizen, you're still able to be involved, and so that's where it starts. So what I loved about it was getting people aware of the issues that were important and listening to the community of what their needs were. And again, my favorite part was door knocking, and actually meeting everybody in their home. Because before, without the restrictions, we would always have lots of gatherings and events and visit all the organizations. And so it was good. We had the youth organizations, the seniors organizations that were very supportive. And so the challenging is always time and money.
Pero some advantage po ba na when you are planning to be in the politics, advantage po ba na ipinanganak ka sa Canada or sa Pilipinas?
I don't think there is an advantage or a disadvantage to kung saan ako where I was born. It really is just seeing, what type of person you are, but also what you've contributed. It is a networking type of thing with name recognition and people that know you and believe in your cause. But if enough people, the main thing is as many people that can support you, that's one thing. But if they don't show up to vote, that's another question. That's another issue. So again, I can have all these people say that they'll vote for me, but if I don't get them to the polls, then it doesn't matter. So that's the difficult part and the barrier, as that some people still think Philippine style, where they don't want to be involved in politics or they don't have time because may trabaho sila, So there's the engagement part is not just difficult in the Filipino community, but everybody in general, is that there is low voter turnout.
Yeah. Anong position ang tinakbuhan mo at that time, Sam?
Park board.
Ano yan? Anong
So park board was a municipal position, and what they were in charge of was the public spaces and the community center.
Parks and playground, like comparing to
Vancouver.
Us.
Okay. Ano bang counterpart dyan sa atin, Brad Tony? Yung posisyon na yan?
No, kasi we have different committee kasi sa atin yung parks and playground, there's somebody who's going in charge for it. Yun ang sa sitwasyon ni Sam. The only advantage in Vancouver or in the municipal level is we do it by election. It cannot be appointed by the mayor.
Okay. So, ang ganda sana pag Sam, nakuha mo ang posisyon na yan, di ba? Kasi advantage para sa mga Filipino, considering na nag-start ka talaga sa ganong yung mga voluntary work mo para sa community.
Pero attorney, looking at kay Sam, maano siya, ang potential niya in community and bilang isang nakatira sa Vancouver and Richmond. So yung advocacy niya is I'm willing to help.
Oh.
So, ano yung long-term goal mo, Sam?
My long-term goal for the community? Yeah. Well, the long-term goal, of course, is to break ground for the Filipino Cultural Center. If that's something that I focus on actually lifting for the community and also making it sustainable, that is a long-term goal for the community, and really empowering our community and have more leaders come up, especially the youth. So really guiding the youth in our community to really speak up.
Yes.
What do you think sa mga Filipino that they're who are planning to migrate in Canada? Do you think yun yung best decision nila na gawin this time?
Depende, because everybody has such a unique situation. Kung pupunta sila dito as a temporary foreign worker,
Student
the
visa.
caregiver, or even as an international student, what I am finding is that a lot of people don't realize the cost of living here mismo sa Vancouver. Because syempre, there's a lot of inquiries that say, oh, should I move to Toronto or Vancouver or Winnipeg? And of course, syempre, there's, Manitoba, Winnipeg is where there are the most Filipinos, and the cost of living is not as high as Vancouver. And so, and again, every situation is different, because we do get Filipinos who go back to the Philippines kasi hindi nila kaya yung adjustment of costs, yung weather, di ba? People who experience the snow can't take it, and homesick. A lot of people get homesick too. And so, as much as I want to encourage Filipinos to live here in Canada, I do think about the Philippines itself, that if we have everybody and professionals leaving the Philippines, then what's going to happen to the Philippines? I think about the opportunity that nurses get to come to abroad to work, but what's going to happen to the Philippines, the nurses and the hospitals and the doctors that are leaving the Philippines? So that's what I think of too.
Parang mawawalan tayo ng di ba? Yung mga magagaling na mga Pinoy, if lahat magpunta abroad, walang maiwan sa atin, di ba?
Yeah, I think as much as, Filipinos, our people, are the number one exports of our country, I do, feel for the Philippines that we need to, still have our best people back home. And that's why, if I was to say a longer term goal, is to really develop that relationship with the Philippines and Canada, to have an exchange, or to really, to have more business in the Philippines and keep it there. I'd rather employ people in the Philippines and have them stay with their family, than try to separate them.
Yeah.
And I have experience with my own family of the separation. But again, there is a lot of people that have a dream to live and work in Canada or abroad, let's say.
Sam, naniniwala ka ba, Sam, na coming to Canada hindi po ibig sabihin na walang opportunity sa Pilipinas?
Again?
Do you believe na pupunta ako ng Canada kasi walang opportunity sa Pilipinas? How do you answer that statement?
Hindi naman sa ganon that walang opportunities sa Philippines, and abroad or Canada is the best way. I think it is, it is a financial decision, but also just where everybody is at, when they go to school. Because again, the common thing that happens is that you are a professional in the Philippines, and as an adult, if you want to bring your kids because you want them to have a Canadian or American education, but what happens is that the education of the parent is not accredited here.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of demoralizing, and even for the common thing of when the husbands are the ones that follow, and the wife is the one that has adjusted and advanced in Canada. Parang the husbands have a harder time adjusting to Canadian life and finding that new job, because again, if they were a senior banker, halimbawa, diba, in the Philippines, and they're only able to do an entry level job, it's really damaging to someone's dignity, but also to our community. So that is something that we need to pressure the Canadian government in regards to policy.
Yeah. Tama. Kasi I observe yung sa problema sa mga hospitals dito, 'di ba? Kulang sila ng doktor, kulang sila ng mga nurses. And then daming mga immigrants dito na mga doctor sila from their home country, and then they were practicing for how many years. May mga nurses din, mga registered nurse na nagpa-practice from their home country for how many years, but here they cannot practice. So sayang yung skills na nakukuha nila. Pwede naman siguro upgrade yan while they are they will be allowed to work, no? Kasi sayang kasi pag magpa-appointment ka ng doktor dito, it takes time bago ka makakuha ng appointment.
Yes, that there is a recent change for the nurses. So there was a recent BC change that the nurses now will be accredited, and that took a long time coming. So we do have to pressure our government officials or whatnot about having that for other industries as well. So again, that happens in many different countries, about professionals not being able to get a job in their industry. And it was only after the pandemic. During the pandemic, they were lacking nurses and doctors, where there was a group that was saying, hey, we have professionals that are here, they can help kasi talaga kailangan namin, right? So only that was introduced during the pandemic.
True.
Not only nurses and doctors, attorney, lahat po, kahit anong profession po yung experience natin sa Pilipinas, pagdating dito is disarmahan ka talaga.
Wala talaga yan. Back to zero ka talaga. Oo. Sam, anong nakikita mong advantage pag kasi ang challenge din sa atin, I think yan yung number one reason why most parents naisipan nilang mag-migrate abroad, US or Canada for their children. Kasi common experience, galing kami doon, once graduate tayo ng college, ang challenge mo talaga, paano ka makahanap ng trabaho na may living wage. But here in Canada, have you experienced that na after graduation, naghanap ka pa ng trabaho tapos hindi ka nakahanap ng trabaho? May experience ba kayong ganun?
Yeah, I have experienced obviously looking for jobs, full-time or part-time, but even as a worker, like when I worked for a neighborhood house, I had a position from Work BC. So Work BC is a government employment program here, and so we would encourage more immigrants to, or anybody, Canadian or immigrants, refugees, to join these free programs to help them look for a job. So sometimes it's always word of mouth. When one person experienced a program, then they'll tell their friends that, I got a job. But other than that, we'd really try to encourage more Filipinos and other people to take advantage of these free programs. And even if there's not even just employment programs, but there's also English classes, cooking classes, like classes that get them to integrate into the community, but also network and volunteer. Because what happens is that you need Canadian experience. Once you arrive here, you want to look for a job, but you apply and they say you need Canadian experience. So how do you get Canadian experience if you just moved? So we encourage people to volunteer as a way of building their resume. Yun ang talagang encouragement ko, because even in my campaign, even for the programs, I encourage volunteering because that's a way of learning how it works here in Vancouver.
Wow. So Sam,
Yes.
yung advocacy mo po sa community center, mayroon ka bang target ng ganon?
For the services
Yeah.
in the center, yes. For some of the services that we wish to have is childcare. Affordable housing for seniors, of course, a multi-purpose room, a theater, all those things that we would want, but also other grassroots nonprofit organizations that will be able to provide services like that in the Filipino Center.
But that's a big project. Paano natin ma-realize yan, Sam? Because we need funds.
Yeah.
So,
It's a big project, and it's a long one, and it is going to take a lot of community members and a lot of the organizations to really support us. But the best thing about this project is that we don't only have the support of the Filipino community, but the other non-Filipino communities. We've made some connections with the Jewish community, with the Japanese center, the Nikkei Center, but also, with all three levels of government too. So building awareness for the need, and also, the help of the intergenerational communities from the first gen to the second gen.
Sam, mayroon po tayong natanggap na feedback na even by contributing $2 daw, lahat tayo sa community sa British Columbia, ma-realize na daw natin yan.
The feedback, if we all did, if
Yep.
everybody
Pag
contributed,
nagko-contribute daw tayo ng at least $2, kaya na daw matayo yung community center na yan.
kaya? Is that every month or every day?
When I
$2.
talk to my mentor, kasi pinag-usapan na yan, sabi niya, Tony, alam mo ba, kahit mag-contribute lang tayo ng, sabihin na natin, $2 per month, kaya na daw, hindi na daw natin kailangan yung malaking donor talaga. If we are all contributing $2 per person, I think, per person.
That could be one way to look at it for fundraising efforts. However, to make a plan like that, I think the best question is, how sustainable is that?
Exactly.
yeah.
Because there's one thing to put a community center up, but how do we keep the doors open? And so that conversation is open. And, again, I'm really happy with the board and the experience that they've all contributed. And, the conversation is ongoing and open, syempre. But there's a lot of advisors that are helping us that have come from, for example, in Seattle, we have, Tita Verna, who's from the Seattle Community Center, Tita Lila Perez, who stood up the Bayanihan Community Center in Victoria. So again, all those different opportunities of fundraising is possible. We just want to see what's the best for our community.
So, saang stage na tayo sa planong yan, Sam?
We're at the beginning stage. Kasi syempre, we just launched our announcement of who we are as Mabuhay House on June 12th. So the process is ongoing. However, we have had some conversations, like I mentioned, with all three levels of government. And so, we'll keep up to date. We'll keep the community up to date on where that's at. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but really, if the goal is within, 5 years, or hopefully before Pablo is 20 years old, that would be great.
May bala ka po ba, Sam, na magpapatawag ka sa mga president ng mga different organization in BC?
The presidents of
Different
Filipino
organization in
organizations
BC.
to have a meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. There's going to be much more community engagements.
Yes.
We are planning to have a youth gathering for all the youth artists, the Filipino filmmakers, the ones that work in theater and art, and a lot of the different groups who want to have a say in what they see in a center. Because it's not mine, it's everybody's, diba? And so the main focus is wanting to, secure funding from the government, because that would help us all too.
So, kumusta naman yung feedback ng mga Filipino community? How active they are na maitayo yung center na to?
Yeah, I think from June 12th, it was very good to see everybody because syempre pandemic, it's one of the first events that we gather in a long time. And so the feedback from what I heard on Sunday and also from the messages is that everybody is excited and they're saying that it is time and there's a momentum in our community to really work together. And the main call of action is really unity, the unity of non-Filipinos and Filipinos to get together to have some solid groundbreaking for the center. So it's been very positive. There's lots of ideas, as well as there's never-ending programs that we want to provide in the center.
So meaning to say, this community center is not exclusive for Filipinos.
Just like all the other community centers that are here with, our Filipino seniors, they rent from Polish community center, from the German one. Having it rented out is going to be one of our, streams of revenue. Syempre. So that's why we say it's by the Filipinos, but it's for everyone. Because it's not just going to be just for us. This is the Filipinos' legacy for the city of Vancouver to be sustainable and to stay.
Parang maganda ang plano na yan kasi ang daming Pinoy dyan sa Vancouver, di ba? And then ang daming mga migrants dyan sa Vancouver galing sa iba't ibang bansa. So I think they will benefit from this project talaga.
At ito na,
Yes.
Attorney Divine, ito na yung project talaga na gustong mangyari ng Filipino community in British Columbia.
Yeah.
What we're finding too is that we have a lot of organizations that don't have a place to gather. So even with the grassroots organizations, when they want to have their workshops or classes, there's nowhere to gather. And even for our seniors, they like to gather monthly, play bingo, have sayawan. They have told me and have echoed that they wish they could just have a place to go to.
Exactly, kasi yung example po, yung Sam, yung gala ng ginawa namin for the Santo Niño Shrine, nagbayad kami ng, I think, mga almost 20,000. So kung mayroon tayong lugar na yon, kung doon, it's an income for the center.
Correct. The center.
Yep. It is not cheap in Vancouver, for sure.
Yung mga parents mo, I'm sure nag-retire na sila from work. So, kasi usually pag mga Pinoy, mas gusto nila mag-retire sa Philippines. What about your parents? So, ano yung preference nila? Mas gusto ba nila sa Canada mag-retire or mas gusto nila, pabakasyon-bakasyon lang sa Philippines?
Yeah, for my dad, balik-balik lang. He's here in Vancouver. And for my mom, she's currently in the Philippines right now. And she does want to retire in the Philippines and she wants me to move there because she wants, obviously, to be close to Pablo. And so that's why having the ability to go back and forth is great. But really for my mom, it's always about the weather. Diba? Gusto nila yung 6 months dito, 6 months doon, pag malamig, punta sa Philippines.
Sam, yung magulang kasi, yung Filipino parents natin is, kahit may ibang ka na, may sarili ka na, tinatawagan ka pa rin ba ng mama mo, hey, kumain ka na? Saan ka na? Umukawi ka na ba sa bahay?
Of course.
Pinoy, di ba?
Super close kami. My whole family is very close, and even my titas always check up on us. And syempre, if they have, we always get baon from them. We always share meals.
Na-mention mo kanina, Sam, na yung Christmas talaga is the best season para sa mga Pinoy. Ba't mo nasabi yan? May Christmas naman dito sa Canada, di ba? But how do you compare sa Christmas celebration dito kaysa Christmas celebration sa Pinas?
Actually, I should say Christmas and New Year. Iba talaga ang New Year sa Philippines. As in, there's actually a celebration. Kasi na-experience ko dito, it's so quiet, and as much as, even fireworks here are banned now in Vancouver. You're not allowed to have fireworks. Pero sa Philippines, you have your 12 fruits, you have your midnight, you have all the fireworks. It's just talagang maririnig mo yung bagong taon doon.
May buhay
It's just
talaga.
so much more exciting. And maraming tao. There's just like a lot of people everywhere and food all the time. And I just find like sometimes depending where you live, it's so quiet. There's gonna be noise complaints after 11 p.m. So it is different. And I haven't been for Christmas and New Year back then. And actually, sa totoo lang, Christmas was really good in the Philippines kasi it was my lola's birthday. And so she's passed away now, pero we were there kasi birthday niya. So that's why everybody would go home, and it was just like a special time of the year to go ever since. So I haven't been back there for Christmas in a long time.
Have you tried, Sam, have you tried sharing, pinanganak ka sa Canada, have you tried sharing that experience, your culture, our culture, have you tried sharing it to other nationality or ibang lahi?
Yeah, I do some speaking events to the non-Filipino community, especially when I talk about my experience on volunteering and networking. That's kind of one of the things that I always advocate for, to encourage people on, when they ask me, how did I get to where I am? And so I love talking about my Filipino experience and the type of food that I eat or how we treat each other. And, even in my emails, I will put salamat. And so we want to make it a normal thing for people to hear, because I want to keep the Tagalog, alive, and people ask questions. And, one of the businesses that I have is a wedding coordinator. And so I love it when I do Filipino weddings, but also I explain what the money dance is to the non-Filipino guests. What does that mean? How about the, principal sponsors? What do those mean? The cord, the veil, the coins. So those are traditions that we have. And so, there's a lot of people that have questions. There are so many valuable things that are instilling in us as people, and I think that's why we're so respected in regards to our value in culture and our heritage. Like, we are very proud people.
Yeah. So ano yung nakikita mong strength ng mga Pinoy, Sam, na wala talaga sa iba?
Wala sa iba. I mean, we are very hardworking. We are the happiest people. I think that was one of the statistics.
Hospitality.
From Guinness or something, diba? But our strengths really is we have the compassion. And I think there's a lot of things that go for that. I mean, for me, I'm very sensitive myself. Like, I always cry in movies and situations, but really having that empathy and compassion in us.
Bakit? Ano ba yung iba? Wala silang ganyan? Hindi.
I know. I just think, I don't know. I think we are all over the world. I think, sa totoo lang too, we are very adaptable and flexible. So again, I find that where sometimes there's Pinoys that will just get a job in abroad and they don't even know where they're going, and they're going to the Yukon territories. And so wala silang choice mag-adapt. And so they will do anything for their family. I think we are very family oriented, and that's what is not lost in our community. And so when you have that, there's always that one goal in mind, is that they care for their families, they respect their elders, and they will want to really be proud of where they come from. Because you will not see a Filipino that is not, waving a flag or saying that they're Filipino. And what I have experienced as well is that the strength of learning, and this is for the second generation, that I have experienced, that they're hungry for their culture. So there's always never-ending learning about each other and their history.
Sam, mayroon ako experience, sabi nila, bakit maingay doon? Ay, mga Pilipino yan.
Oh, di ba? Pag malakas sila sa bus when they're
Oh,
talking.
tapos minsan daw sa mall,
Yeah.
Tapos yung karaoke, Sam, parang tayo lang ang meron, di ba? Yung nagka-karaoke. Kayo nagka-karaoke po ba kayo?
Yeah, syempre. I mean, that's why too. There's always that confusion where who invented the karaoke, and there's so many stories that I've heard where it's like, well, it was the Filipinos who were working in Japan who sang the karaoke because they were hired to sing all those cover songs. So is it created by the Japanese or is it created by the Filipinos? I don't know, but we do sure have the talent for the singing and dancing, of course.
Yeah, true. Okay. So Sam, ano yung mensahe mo na gustong iparating sa mga nakikinig natin?
My message?
Yes.
Lots of messages. I guess my main thing is to really have a sense of worth para sa sarili mo, where there's lots of hard decisions that you have to make and life choices, and to never really stir away from your core values. Parang yung like when you have to make a hard decision, you have to really look at yourself and to see if it's something that you feel inside that feels good, and what I can encourage as well is to have that very good support system that will help you and guide you for any decision that you make, whether it's for work or personal. But really, I don't know, what I want to say is keeping your mental health and physical health very, having that as number one, as we always say that we only have one body, diba? So this is life that we're living, and to really leave a legacy behind of what you want to do with your life. But I encourage everybody to just really have that person or friends or family to really make sure that everybody is okay, especially during the pandemic. It's been an isolating time during the pandemic, and so my message is to get involved, don't isolate yourself, and really reach out when needed.
Okay. So thank you very much, Sam, sa pag-share po ninyo. Very inspiring yung yung journey mo. Kasi even if you were born and raised in Canada, hindi namin mapi-feel na Canadian po kayo. Para tayo nakipag-usap lang, Tony, ng isang Filipino, no? Di ba? Filipino talaga ang dating mo. Hindi namin makikita yung trace na Canadian ka. Di ba, Brad Tony?
Oo nga, Attorney Divine, when I first met Sam, sabi ko, do you speak Tagalog? Saya. Then, hindi na ako nag-aalanganin pang kakausapin siya. Sabi, no, I'm born here. Oh, really? So, yeah, it started it there.
Okay.
Magaling,
so thank
magaling.
you very much for your time, Sam. And we would like to thank you sa lahat na ginawa mo para sa mga Filipino community. I will just hope and pray na ma-realize yung community center na dream nyo dyan sa Vancouver, kasi makakatulong yan not only the Filipino immigrants but also all other immigrants na pupunta dito sa Canada. Malaking tulong talaga na meron silang support group o meron silang mapuntahan pagdating nila dito na pwedeng tumulong sa kanila kung anong dapat gawin, paano mag-adjust and everything. So thank you very much for your time, Sam.
Maraming salamat.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, Brad Tony, your parting message sa mga televiewers natin.
Attorney Divine, kahibautang we are in Cebu. Live tayo ngayon sa studio ng Channel 47 in Cardinal Rosales and Cebu City. So, nandito tayo ngayon. So, magpapaano lang tayo, Attorney. We have to make an announcement na ang enthronement po ng Senior Santo Niño's Shrine will be in August 20 this year. Nandito kami ni Father Dennis sa Cebu, having a meeting with the mayor, already done with the meeting with the mayor, and this afternoon, magkakaroon po tayo ng meeting with the bishops, and I think in the afternoon with Governor Gwen. So to our viewers sa CCTN International Pinoy Journey, So, natapos na naman yung isang oras natin na istorya, na sharing our journey here in Canada, from the Philippines to the Canada. So sana po, tangkilikin natin na manunood kayo every week on the same channel and same station. It's 9:30 to 10:30 here in Cebu and 6:30 to 7:30 evening in Canada, and it can also be seen in YouTube and Facebook. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brad Tony, ug sa atong mga televiewers. Thank you very much for your time. And of course, sa atong mga staff no sa CCTN Channel 47, salamat ni Inday Lopez, salamat usab ni Joanne Lopez Alfabete, salamat ni Kuya Nilo Cabarles, ug ingon man ni Robert Algidano. Thank you guys sa inyong pagsuporta kanunay sa atong program. Again, thank you Sam o Brad Tony, sa tanang mga televiewers. Thank you sa inyong time. Have a nice day and see you again next week. Bye.
Thank you, Sam.